class, we are going to distinguish the difference between fiction and nonfiction. Basically, fiction is the storytelling of imagined events, and nonfiction is a fact or reality. Specifically, fiction is imagined stories such as novels, fables, fairy tales, cartoons, and comics. These can contain some factual events that are revised with imaginary contents.
What about movies?
Excellent question. What do you think?
Fiction.
Very good. Movies and video games, the ones you guys always play after school, are fiction. Most of them are made-up stories. Some are based on true stories, but they have added imaginary stories to grab people's attention. Fiction has the ability to stir people's emotions. It can give us hope and make us laugh or cry. I'm sure you have cried, laughed hard, or felt so sorry for the characters in the fiction you have read or seen. Finally, contrasted with fiction, nonfiction deals with facts. However, the facts could contain false information.
How?
Well, the author believes that what he or she has written is true at that time, but the facts that he or she wrote could be proven false afterwards. Common examples of nonfiction works are essays, journals, documentaries, photographs, and biographies.
Nanorobotics is the emerging field of building tiny machines whose dimensions are measured in nanometers. A nanometer is a billionth of a meter, or to put it another way, a millionth of a millimeter. Generally, nanomachines are still only theoretical. With current technology, we cannot as yet make these machines. Even the physics and chemistry of machines of this size is still being studied, though rapid gains are being made, and these may soon prove fruitful. Most proposed applications of nanorobots are medical. People have suggested that nanorobots could enter the body and work from the inside to repair damaged parts such as the heart or deal with disease. Nothing like this has yet been produced, but this still remains one of the most likely products of nanotechnology, with huge amounts of money being spent on research and development. Other approaches involve combining nanorobots with naturally occurring bacteria. In summary, there is a lot of potential for this technology. How it may change our lives in the next 10, 20, or 30 years will be exciting to watch.
We are led to believe that basically much of eastern North America was heavily cloaked in mature forest that today we covet as old growth, and yet at one time it was the sort of ancestral botanical blanket that covered much of certainly Massachusetts and New England. Certainly one of the first things that happened as increasing waves of colonists arrived was the need to clear the land. And this clearing of the land is something that started really in the form of small subsistence farms. The timber was used for building houses, for building ships, for firewood, for all manner of things. The boulders of the glacial erratic stones that were so much a part of the New England landscape are today sort of what we find in the lattice work of stone walls that one can find practically anywhere in the landscape if it's in a relatively untouched condition. By the early part of the 19th century, it's thought that generally the zenith of clearing had taken place sometime in the 1830s, 1840s, and the trees and the forests were essentially clear-cut to an extent that is almost unbelievable.
Hi everybody. This weekend we'll dedicate the newest American icon on our national mall, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's a beautiful building, 5 stories high and some 70 feet below the ground, situated just across the street from the Washington Monument. And this museum tells a story of America that hasn't always taken a front seat in our national narrative. As a people, we've rightfully passed on the tales of the giants who built this country, but too often, willful or not, we've chosen to gloss over or ignore entirely the experience of millions upon millions of others. But this museum chooses to tell a fuller story. It doesn't gauze up some bygone era or avoid uncomfortable truths. Rather, it embraces the patriotic recognition that America is a constant work in progress, that each successive generation can look upon our imperfections and decide that it is within our collective power to align this nation with the high ideals of our founding.
The assignment that I'm going to set for the holiday period is one that we've given students for a number of years. It's quite practical and will allow you to get out and about. It's no good being shut up in your rooms all the time. It does have a written element too. Basically, it's our data gathering exercise, and there are two choices with regard to how you collect the data. We'll go through those in a moment. I'm also going to give you a link to an internet site that is, well, it's critical that you review this before you do anything, as it provides a lot of guidance on data presentation, both in terms of how you plot it, its diagrammatic form, and also its description, which has to be clear.
To reach some kind of understanding of a period in the past, the Middle Ages, say, requires a creative act of the imagination, not unlike that of a novelist getting inside the skins of their characters or establishing the environment they live in. What must it have been like to be a peasant under a feudal baron? What might his beliefs and politics have been? Did he, for example, think his situation was simply part of the natural order of things, or that it was grossly unfair and needed to be overthrown? So you have to imagine the terms under which life was lived in those days, and learn to feel in a different way about things by putting yourself into a world very different from your own. Now, of course, every age views the past from its own present, and an 18th century historian's concept of the Middle Ages will be very different from that of one from the 21st century, which is why each age has to write its history over again. It's not so much that more facts or evidence come to light, if they do, but that sensibilities change too.
A cliché, as you know, is an overused and worn-out phrase, and these are to be avoided like the plague in your essays. Indeed, someone once said, I quote, "There is no greater danger to either education or thinking than the popular phrase." Let me digress a little further. Originally, a cliché was a printer's term, back in the days when letters were set one by one, for a ready-made block of type of frequently used phrases, usually in the newspaper business. So, there you are. Clichés were also known as stereotypes. Now, if you think of graphic design as a language, with its own vocabulary, grammar, and so on, it too must have its clichés. Obvious examples would be the twin Greek masks of comedy and tragedy that symbolise the theatre, and, more popularly known, the heart as a symbol of love, especially on Valentine cards and so on. Far from being a terrible fault, as it would be in literature, the visual cliché is essential in the world of graphic communication. This is certainly true when it comes to advertising and propaganda. The visual cliché can give immediate life to an idea and a clear meaning to what could be a mere abstraction.
Although a shock caused by an emotional event rarely creates immediate danger, in some people it can have a strong influence on their life long after the event itself has passed. This includes things like thinking about the event which caused the shock again and again, avoiding certain situations, or even uncontrollable anger. These reactions can be serious if they're not dealt with.
The three buildings together, well, they represent China's past, present, and future. The first to be built, the Jinmao Tower, represents a traditional Chinese pagoda with its multiple levels. The second one, the Shanghai World Financial Center, is smooth and yet sharp-edged. It represents the dynamism of the modern era. As for the third, when we began designing that, we looked at the grouping of the buildings. They work together as a family. Now, in Chinese thinking, a family is more important than individuals, so there's an important cultural influence there. You can view the buildings from different angles. We wanted the building to be very different and, well, asymmetric. In the end, we decided to build it as a spiral. It's a very futuristic look.
The other day I saw an advert on the internet asking for volunteers to test a new skin cream. It was an anti-aging product. How is it possible for a cream or lotion to stop us looking old? I don't think any skincare goods can make us look younger. I certainly don't believe cosmetics companies that say their expensive creams can remove wrinkles. They just want to make lots of money. Why do people believe them? How do they know their creams work? They did not test their products on thousands of people over 50 years. I think if a person uses an anti-aging cream for 50 years, They would not even look a year younger when they are 60. This means it's a huge waste of money. Only healthy living can keep us.
The computerized workplace can be hazardous to your health if you don't take preventative measures. Today, we'll go over what some of these hazards are, and more importantly, what can be done about them. One major complaint, maybe the biggest complaint, of people who spend time at the computer is eye strain. To help ease the strain on the eyes, the computer screen should be about 2 feet from your eyes. The entire screen should be in focus. The brightness and contrast should be adjusted for best readability. A good way to relieve eye strain is to look away from the screen frequently. Focus your eyes on objects that are far away, like something outside, the building across the street or the tree in the park.
Now researchers join them in their diaper diving to explore when and how bacteria colonize the human gut. Adults harbor complex microbial ecosystems within their GI tracts. These bacteria help digest food and contribute to a healthy immune system. But when a baby's born, its intestine is devoid of bacterial inhabitants. Within days, however, a cavalcade of microbes set up shop, establishing a vibrant intestinal community whose residents soon outnumber the baby's own cells. The researchers found that the early months were chaotic, with established species disappearing and new ones taking their place. But by the time the babies were 12 months old, each harbored a dynamic but unique collection of intestinal fauna. A set of fraternal twins had the most similar bugs, which suggests that genetics may have something to do with which bacteria stick around. Next, I'll look at how formula versus breast milk affects a baby's intestinal ecosystem.
When the European Economic Community was established in 1957, its aim was, in broad terms, to move towards closer political and economic cooperation. Today, the much larger European Union has a far-reaching influence on many aspects of our lives, from the conditions we work under to the safety standards we must adhere to and the environment in which we live. In order to achieve the free flow of goods and services, workers and capital between the member countries, they needed to establish mutual policies in areas as diverse as agriculture, transport and working conditions. When they had agreed on these policies, they became law. Now, though, the EU is concerned with a far wider range of issues.
There will be a chemistry test in the classroom next week. The project is divided into 4 main sections. There are dedicated specialist librarians available all the time.